Every day, about 300 million women all over the world are having their menstrual period, which is a vaginal blood flow which they have every month for a certain number of days. And they will have it up until about the ages of 45 to 50 and sometimes well above 50 years. Have you ever wondered why women have menstrual periods? Well, in this video, I will be talking about the hormonal interactions that bring about menstrual periods, and I will be talking about it in simple terms in a way that you can understand what goes on. Hello and welcome to Case Corner. My name is Karen, and on this channel I talk all about menstrual periods. Menstrual periods are a natural thing that happens in women where every month the woman has a vaginal bleeding for a number of days, and she will have this bleeding up until about the age of 45 up until 50, and a few women will have it a few years after age 50. Usually starts in young girls from the ages of 10 to 12, but sometimes as early as 8 years. Now, menstrual periods are brought about by hormones. They're actually part of a cycle of events that happen in the body. So the menstrual periods do not happen in isolation. It's actually part of some other things that go on in the body, and they are brought about by hormones. And hormones are actually chemical substances in the body that control the different processes or the different things that happen in the body. For the menstrual cycle, there are four main hormones that are involved in all the events that happen that bring about the menstrual period. And the first one of them is the follicle stimulating hormone, which we will be talking about. And then there's also estrogen, which we will be talking about. We have progesterone, and there is the luteinizing hormone. So these four hormones bring about, they work together to bring about the menstrual cycle, and part of that cycle is the menstrual period. Inside the brain, there is an organ called the pituitary gland. Now, glands are organs that produce secretions like sweat, like milk, like hormones, like tears. So the pituitary gland is one of these kind of organs. So the pituitary gland actually secretes the hormone called follicle stimulating hormone. This hormone is going to work on the ovaries, and it causes the ovaries to begin to produce follicles. These follicles are like sacs. They are structures they're shaped like sacs, and inside each follicle are eggs, and the eggs are actually immature, and they will be getting through the process to become mature. So about 3 to 20 of these follicles are produced under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone. Now, these follicles, when they are produced, they too begin to secrete estrogen, or they begin to produce estrogen. The estrogen, which is produced by these follicles, has two main things that it does. The first thing is that it starts to thicken the uterine lining. So the walls of the uterus, it starts to kind of thicken it, kind of add another layer to it in preparation for implantation. Now that means that because the eggs are getting mature, they would eventually be released, and the whole reproductive system is geared toward reproduction. So the lining of the uterus is being prepared just in case one of those eggs get fertilized. They will need implantation for a pregnancy to happen. So that thickening of that lining in the uterus is brought about by estrogen. Now, the second thing which estrogen does is that by thickening the uterine lining, it helps to prepare a stable environment for the egg in case it gets fertilized to get implanted. So those are the two things that estrogen does. So while the follicles are getting, they're growing, they are getting mature. Remember that estrogen is being produced. And so that increase in estrogen, so increase in the hormonal level, and it's basically estrogen we're talking about here, the increase in that level is going to trigger this same pituitary gland which we started with to secrete yet another hormone. And this time, the hormone is called the luteinizing hormone. The luteinizing hormone is going to work again on the same ovaries, and it's going to cause the mature egg to get released in a process called ovulation. So ovulation is basically the release of a mature egg from the ovary into the fallopian tube under the influence of luteinizing hormone. If you're having any value from this video so far, please like the video and share it, and consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell so that you don't miss any of these videos. Now let's talk about what happens after ovulation. So remember, I said that in ovulation or during ovulation, the mature egg is released into the fallopian tube under the influence of the luteinizing hormone. Now, the follicle that had this mature egg that has been released is going to turn into a yellowish structure, and that yellowish structure is called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum will secrete progesterone, and the thing which progesterone does is that it sustains that thickened lining of the uterus, which was brought about by estrogen. So it's kind of a support, to continue to hold that lining, to keep that lining so that the lining stays thick and it gets ready for implantation. So that's what progesterone will do. If the egg gets fertilized, then the corpus luteum will stay for a while and will continue producing progesterone so that the lining is sustained and the egg or the fertilized egg can get implanted. However, if the egg does not get fertilized, the corpus luteum will shrink. It will kind of disintegrate. And because it does that, the progesterone and estrogen levels will also drop. Now, when it drops, remember that it's the progesterone that is sustaining the thickened lining, and the thickened lining was brought about in the first place because of estrogen. So when the corpus luteum disintegrates and progesterone and estrogen levels are dropping, then the almost obvious thing that is going to happen is the fact that that lining, which had been thickened, the added lining on the uterus, is going to shrink because they were there in the first place because of estrogen and progesterone. So as these two hormonal levels are dropping, that lining which had been put there, that extra lining which had been put there, will break down. It is actually the breakdown of this lining, the shedding of this lining that is going out, or that passes out through the vagina as blood, that we refer to as the menstrual period. When the shedding starts, then you have some other hormones, prostaglandins, for example, that will bring about the contracting to get that blood out. So you would have your bleeding coming because the lining that was thickened, or that extra lining that had been put there, is broken down because hormonal levels, the hormones that were sustaining it, have now dropped. Now, the drop in hormonal levels at this point in time is going to trigger the pituitary gland again to secrete follicle stimulating hormone and kind of ask the ovaries to start to secrete another set of follicles. So 3 to 20 follicles again that contain the eggs, and then the whole cycle starts all over. So the whole thing goes again. There are different changes, physical changes, which women would experience during these different stages because of the interaction of these different hormones. Actually happens in 4 different stages. And I want you to watch the space for my next video. It's going to be talking about these different stages and the different changes that you might experience in your body or even in your emotions when you go through them as you go round your menstrual cycle. Thank you for watching. I'd like you to comment down below about how you call menstrual periods where you come from. Some people call it bra, some people call it PD. I just want you to comment down below what you call it from the area where you come from. God bless you and I'll see you in the next video.